Hello, so welcome to the last video regarding the hype Chadori. So this video is going to be a bit of a summary of the last few videos, and we're going to see what we think of it after a few mods and bits and pieces. So to start off with, I'm going to tell you what mods I've done on it, or what work I've done on it. Some of them aren't mods. So to start with, I replaced the ESC in it with an MSC, as you can see, because I don't know, it came with it and I just thought that bit of vintage might be nice, and plus I like the resistor. I like the look of the resistor on the side. That's basically it. It came with everything, so I thought, oh, I might as well stick it in there. I put a slightly better steering servo in it. It already had an okay servo for the mechanical speed controller. So that pretty much sorted that out. Fly Sky receiver, which is modern, I know, but it's fine, it works good. I find them quite reliable in most of my cars, and I had one kicking about, so I use that. So the changes that I made, well, the first one was bearings. I replaced bearings in the wheels. If you buy one of these, or if you've got one of these, they actually did have, and they did have another name as the ProTech Booster, and that came fully ball raced. This one didn't. This one had nylon bushes and brass bushings, just like a Tamiya, just like a lower end Tamiya. So they had to go for the same reason as the Tamiya ones do, and that freed it up a little bit. Also, I got the shocks cheap off of eBay. I think the rear shocks were about £6 and the front were about £5. They're not wonderful. They came without oil, but since I've put a decent oil in them, it performed quite well in the running video. It surprised me, actually. I would probably put a harder oil in the back. I went for the Tamiya soft oil just because that's what I had hanging about. I would probably go harder in the back because there's a lot of weight back there, and you can see that in the video, but they performed well for what they are, much better than the standard ones. So that was a mod that needed doing. I put the Maverick, sorry, it's a 22-turn motor. I put the Maverick 22-turn motor in there, as it did have an old silver can, and it wasn't a very good quality silver can either. So I got rid of that and put that in, mainly because I thought the colour, I like the colour. Again, I have to remind you, I'm completely colourblind. So these things are all guesswork when it comes to colour, but I just thought it livened the back up a little bit, sort of put it in that shell suit era kind of car. So that was done. Cleaned the gearbox, oiled it all up, took a few bits and pieces apart and greased them up, and that's pretty much it. The only modification from new I can see, which it hasn't made a difference because they're in exactly the same design really as the originals, is 3D printed suspension arms. They're just a little bit tougher, and that is basically the modifications I've done. I just got it running. I'm running the standard NIM battery, and you'll probably see, well, I'm going to sum it up more when I get talking about the running of the vehicle, but it didn't seem very fast. But then again, just a 540, just a NIM battery. It's quite a heavy car. I can imagine a lipo would liven that up quite a lot. I think some of the settings on my transmitter might have been holding it back a little bit, but I really couldn't be bothered to fart around with that too much. I just wanted to see how it went. But anyway, so that's pretty much it regarding the modifications. So next I'll move on to what I think the quality of this buggy is like. So the quality of this buggy, it's a good question. I don't think it's bad at all. I know some people have said the plastics are questionable. I don't think so. I can't prove this because I'm not willing to crash it into a curb to see how well it copes with crashing. But from working on it, I have found no stripped nuts or bolts or screws or anything. So I don't think the plastics are too bad. Obviously, being 20 odd years old, it's going to have its weak spots like anything, but I've worked on other higher end buggies which are you know, just as not weak, but just as vulnerable. So I'm not going to knock the quality too much on this. The tyres are a bit soft, but they're 25 years old, so who knows what they were like. They'd probably be fine with a bit of sponge in there. It has hex screws, which the only Tamiya I've built that had hex screws cost me 230 quid. That was the Super Avanti TD4. I'm not going to say this is on par with it, don't get me wrong, but it's a nice addition. Again, the plastics of the body, they're no different than anything else, than any other budget hobby grade buggy. And the hardware, the servos, you know, who doesn't upgrade servos? It's nice that it came with servos. You know, most of the time you're left to your own devices when it comes to that. And the suspension, yes, it was pants, but that's another thing that we all upgrade if we feel like it. So I'm not going to knock it on that either. It's got metal parts to the chassis, which is a surprise. That surprised me. I think, although I think that does add to it being a bit heavy, but sometimes heavy can give a feel of quality. I don't know. That's subjective. That's down to whoever's using it, buying it, whatever. Which reminds me, I found the buyer's receipt in the box for this, and whoever bought it from the UK in 2002. They paid £141. That's what the credit card receipt said. I can only assume that they also bought a remote control, battery, and some other bits and pieces. But who knows? Who knows? I don't know. But it was bought also on the 20th of December. So we know the story there. This was someone's Christmas present, and I think they'd have been happy with this. And I like little stories like that. It's got a history. You know, this made someone's day, Christmas Day, and they had fun playing with this. Not too much because it's hardly been used, but you know. Moving on to the notorious gearbox, I've had no problems. I've put this slightly more powerful motor in it, and it runs as smooth as silk. There's no damage to this gearbox whatsoever in there. I've cleaned it, greased it, and it seems just fine. So I don't see any weak spots there. Obviously there's the dry plastics from being a bit old. You get a few cracks here and there, but there's no major damage or anything like that. So yeah, I don't see any problems with it quality wise whatsoever. And like I say, a crash into a curb, that would tell us. But then again, you get any old remote control car, radio control car, and smash it into a curb full speed, you're lucky if it doesn't do some kind of damage. So quality wise, I'm going to say this is comparable to a lower end Tamiya, maybe slightly higher. It's very comparable to the Kyosho Outrage I had, which was a budget Kyosho, but still the name is kind of synonymous with quality. So I don't think they've done too bad in me mentioning the hype Chadori at the same time. I think it's not a bad buggy, and a beginner or anyone after a budget buggy, budget racing, would be happy with this, and certainly would have been back in the day, especially as it's got so much adjustment and performance adjustments. You know, it's got the bits and pieces of a higher end buggy, and really to improve it I've had to spend very little to do so. So quality, yeah, I'm not too disappointed. It is what it is. So going back to the running video, I was really surprised at how smooth this was. It wasn't fast, but I've said already that I think an ESC and a LiPo would properly liven it up. I went old school on this, and it showed. But the gearbox was so smooth, the handling was smooth, it seemed solid. I was quite happy with the way it ran. I was surprised by the way it ran. So if you want to see how it did run, then just pop back to the running video and tell me what you think. But I think you would be pleasantly surprised. You will say to me that the suspension needed hardening up a bit, and the tyres needed some sponges in. But I just ran it as it was. It was fun, but I do think a lighter, more powerful battery and an ESC would bring this to life. Maybe a more powerful motor, don't know. Didn't want to push it with the gearbox, but it seemed okay. So I think pretty much most of the things I've said have summed it up, really. I think you've probably got an idea of what I think about this buggy. It's never going to be a top-end buggy. It was never meant to be a top-end buggy. They were having a go at getting people into racing on a budget. And I think, to be honest, it's got all the bits and pieces on it that can teach you how to set up a car and learn how to race. And with the right ESCs, motors, etc., I'm sure you could make it a half decent performance buggy. The chassis is a decent chassis. It looks very similar to some other chassis, and I think it's okay. It's balanced well. The quality is okay for the money. It was nothing really, and it's good fun. So as far as it being the worst two-wheel drive buggy ever made, I think we all know that that's probably not the case. I mean, there's been some corkers, hasn't there, in the past, and this is nowhere near the worst. It's nowhere near the best. It's somewhere in the middle, but it's certainly right on par with most other budget buggies. So credit where it's due. It's lasted 25 years, so the quality can't be that bad, can it? Yeah, I think it's okay. You can make your mind up over the videos what you think. I'm just glad I got to work on it, share my thoughts, get it working, have a go, and got a couple of people looked at it and commented on it, so I'm happy. So all I can say really to that is thank you for the people that did comment, thank you for the people that did like the video, and thank you for the people that subscribed. I really appreciate it. It means the world. I'm going to continue doing other random videos and bits and pieces. I've got one coming up on my Tamiya juniors and mini four-wheel drives that I've got paired up with my bigger cars. So I shall speak more random nonsense about those, and if anyone's interested in it, then please drop in and have a look and like and subscribe and all the other good stuff that comes with it. But in the meantime, you look after yourself, have a good day, and take care. Thank you.